How do you interpret the number today? Are we sort of back to normal in the jobs market, or is this the beginning of a weaker cycle?
Well, thanks for having me. And before I get started, look, I just want to reach out to everyone in Louisiana and Texas and remind all of your viewers, all the tragedy that they're still going through, and remind everyone that we at the White House, are not forgetting about them for a second, and we're laser focused on what's going on out there. Look, on the economic data today, it's part of the natural growth that we're seeing in the economy. If you look at the data we had this week, we had a GDP number of 3% this week. We had a jobs number that is still very good. If I would have told you at the beginning of the year, or told you at Inauguration Day, that we'd be at 3% GDP and 4.4% unemployment, you would have said, hey, those are great numbers. That would be an amazing accomplishment by Labor Day. Well, we're there. So, overall, we're very, very pleased with where we are in the economy, where we are in the cycle. We still know there's a lot of work to do and a lot more upside, and the president's very focused on that. That's why we launched our tax agenda this week, because we think we can really grow the economy much further from here.
Well, before we get to taxes, you pointed the picture that jobs are consistently very, very solid. On the flip side, wages just aren't really going anywhere, 2.5% year on year. And also, inflation also really stagnant. What is the right monetary policy for something like that?
So look, we are concerned about the wages, and that has a lot to do with our tax policy. If you listen to what the president outlined earlier this week, he talked about our corporate tax system, or our business tax system, and how inefficient our business tax system is, and how we really penalize businesses to be in America. When you penalize businesses to be in America, they don't hire American workers. We need to get our tax rates down to be competitive with the rest of the world. When they get our tax rates down, we then compete for labor. You compete for labor by driving wages and paying more wages to get people to work for you. So we are concerned about wage growth. We do want to get wage growth back in the system. You're absolutely right. When I saw the numbers, the first thing I looked at was the wage number, and it's been flat at 2.5 for a long period of time. We need to put more money back in U.S. consumers' pockets, and that's what we're trying to do, both by wage growth and by tax efficiency.
So, Gary, you kind of diverted my question there. So that seems that it's a fiscal policy issue, not a monetary policy issue. Do you feel monetary policy then cannot help with the wage inflation debate?
Look, I think wage inflation has to come through demand for more workers at higher price. And the way we create demand for workers is we create a better operating environment in the United States. You create a better operating environment in the United States by making the United States more competitive. You create the competition by lowering the business tax rate and having businesses have to be here and want to be here in the United States. And that's exactly what the president laid out earlier this week.
All right, so let's go to tax reform for a second. We've been hearing, I feel, a lot of mixed messages from the White House and lawmakers in terms of that next step. For example, are you going to have to release additional tax details in a blueprint later this month? That's what we heard from Secretary Mnuchin yesterday in some news outlets.
So, as I think you're all acutely aware, Secretary Mnuchin, myself, the leadership of the Senate, the leadership of the House, we've been working literally since November and December on a tax blueprint. We've met nonstop since then. The 6 of us have agreed on an outline, a blueprint, a skeleton. We agree on what we need to do for tax reform. We're now working with the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee to really finalize what that blueprint will look like. I would say take a skeleton, put the muscles on it, put the skin on it. That's going to get released in the next whatever weeks or months as those committees get together and finalize all of the details as the natural governing process happens. And that's going to start literally next week.
So, Gary, is the legislation in the hands of the Tax Writing Committee right now?
The legislation is in all of our hands. We're working together. The group of 6, the 6 of us will be in the White House with the president next week. We're going to continue to drive.
Gary, I get that, but in order to move it forward, it has to be with the Tax Writing Committee. So have you passed it off yet to them?
There's a communal effort going on here. We are working very collegially together to get tax reform done in a way that everyone buys in every step of the way. And that's exactly what's going on here. Ultimately, tax reform has to be voted on in the House and the Senate. So, yes, we're working with the House and the Senate to do that.
Well, okay, fair enough. So you're talking more, we're all working together, but then you have Senator McCain coming out in the Washington Post with a very, very scathing review on President Trump. He's saying we need to compromise, even if we have to take something off the table that we didn't want, but saying that we have a president without any experience, he's poorly informed, he's impulsive, we don't answer to him, we answer to the American people. Doesn't stuff like that make the cooperation you're talking about impossible?
It seems like we have a lot of cooperation, a lot of momentum on tax reform. I think a lot of us understand the importance of getting taxes right, of simplifying the tax code, of returning more of people's hard-earned income back to the American public, not sending it to the government to spend, allowing people to spend their own money, simplifying the tax code. The basic principles that the president laid out earlier this week appeal to everyone in this country. Why shouldn't we get out of the way and allow more Americans to keep more of their hard-earned
Well, Gary,
income? I don't think there's a politician that doesn't agree with that.
I agree with you. I think there's a person in the world who doesn't agree with that, right? But then you have Mitch McConnell, who's Trump has said very disparaging things on Twitter about. You have Speaker Paul Ryan, who's at odds with the president. Now you have Senator McCain coming out and do a very scathing review. You might want it, but the how you get there matters. And doesn't the how you get there doesn't work anymore if we're like this in Congress?
I'm confident that we're working well with Congress because I'm speaking to many of the people you just mentioned. We're speaking on a daily basis, and we've got great momentum on taxes right now.
Okay, so tell me what you're going to do in February. What job are you going to have?
I'm going to be right here doing what I'm doing right now.
Are you going to be in front of the White House or in front of a different building?
I'm going to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now, be in front of the White House with this beautiful new infrastructure being built out here. We'll be working on infrastructure in February.
Yeah, okay, nice segue, Gary. But I asked the question because a lot of heat has been made about the fact that you weren't mentioned in that Missouri speech by President Trump on Wednesday in terms of those working towards tax reform. So there's questions about whether you'd want to stick around to even be considered for Fed chair now.
I'm extremely happy doing what I'm doing. I have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, something that hasn't been done in over 30 years to reform the U.S. tax code. I passionately believe it needs to be done, and I'm one of the luckiest people in the world to have the opportunity to work on it. I'm really excited about what I'm doing.
So you do not want to be head of the Fed?
I'm really excited about doing what I'm doing.
All right, let's wind up on Harvey. You brought it up in terms of extending your condolences to those in Texas and Louisiana. Many say that Harvey could be the most expensive natural disaster in U.S. history. How much harder does the tax and budget debate become now because you have deficit hawks in Congress in the Republican Party?
Look, we have to deal with the Harvey situation. It's not a debatable issue. What people in Texas and Louisiana are going through is unthinkable, unimaginable. I've seen a lot of data. You've seen the data. We're analyzing it literally 24 hours a day here. We have to help the people. We have to help Houston return. It's just not a debate. So we're going to have to spend money. We're going to have to pass some incremental relief bills, and we're just going to have to do that. It's not a choice. So it's just part of governing. Like, part of running the government is dealing with unforeseen issues. We're going to deal with this, and we're going to move on. Look, the part that's going to be more troubling is it's going to have impact on a lot of the economic data. You know, the economic data that we just got, and this unemployment data is probably the last set of clean unemployment data we're going to have for many, many months as we go through the recovery process and people go in and out of unemployment as they rebuild their houses and they rebuild their lives. We're going to have a bunch of data that maybe won't make as much sense for the next 3, 4, 5 months. So, you know, normalizing data for hurricanes and natural disasters is going to be more difficult for us to truly get a bigger picture of what's going on in the U.S. economy.